I burned out. I got tired. I was not happy anymore. I actually quit Corridor.
Really?
This is Wren Weichman, a VFX artist and engineer. He's a member of production house Corridor Digital, and together they've amassed almost 1 billion views on their YouTube channel.
How do you simplify the concept?
I need to make videos that are understandable by everyone, and to do that, I have to physically force myself to rein back my assumptions of what people know.
Wow.
YouTube basically operates, so originally it was views, then it was watch time, now it's based off.
Wow. Sora AI.
Oh my God.
Making videos out of text. Where do you think the movie industry will go?
People are severely underestimating the impact generative AI is going to have, because it's the worst it's ever going to look right now. Last year, Corridor pursued making actual anime films. I didn't work on that project, but it was easily our most controversial project of all time, and a lot of people, they hate us forever.
Let's go back to the moment when little Wren found out about visual effects and was like, oh this is what I want to do for my life. Wren, welcome to the Bad Decisions podcast.
Guys, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's great to talk with both of you.
Man, it's been such a long time since we've been meaning to speak with you. And we've gone on and off to try to get this arranged. And we really appreciate your time. We've had so many questions, from watching all the videos that you guys put out. And we are going to go down into the nitty gritty today, ask you all of the burning questions that we have. So I hope you're ready for it.
I think I'm ready. Let's hear them. Let's go.
Okay. All right. So first things first, I want to say this. The Bad Decisions podcast, the reason we started this podcast was because we wanted everybody watching it to treat it like a self-help book. When you read a self-help book, you finish a book, and when you close it, you become a better person. You've learned something new, and you can go ahead and apply that to your life. The guests that we bring on the Bad Decisions podcast, we always try to get all of their journey, and so people can hear the journey of all these inspiring guests like yourself, and then learn from all the mistakes that you might have made in the past and all the successes. So I want to take this all
I've never
the way
made
back.
any mistakes.
Anyway, okay, end of the podcast.
Not one mistake ever. Flawless my whole life.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Never made a single mistake in my life. Well, that makes the podcast quite short.
Short,
then.
yeah.
All right. Thank you so
you
much
guys
for
for
All right, it was great
coming
talking.
here.
See you next time. That was my journey, just zero to perfection instantly. Yeah, no, my journey is a long one, dude. Been doing this a while.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing. I wanted to break it down. Let's go back to when you were little Wren, like this small, this tiny.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Let's go back to the moment when little Wren found out about visual effects and was like, oh shit, this is what I want to do for my life.
Wow, okay, so there are a few moments like that. So a lot of people today, a lot of the people we work with, they've been into filmmaking since they were 10 years old. My buddy Peter, he started learning Blender when he was 10 or 11 years old, and by the time he graduated high school, he was an expert with it. Meanwhile, I was a sophomore in high school when I discovered video editing for the first time, and because it was I think I was recording DVR recording The Last Samurai, and the movie crashed halfway through. It was off of a cable thing. This is way back in the day. This is 2004, and I had to re-record it, and I had to splice it the exact same scene to make one file, and that was the first time I ever did any video editing, and I was so excited. I was like, Hollywood, here I come! Without any knowledge of even what that sentence meant. Fast forward to my senior year of high school, I had a video editing class, and I did a little bit there. But it wasn't until I was in college for an engineering degree that I discovered videocopilot.net. Hey, what's up? Welcome back to another tutorial from Video Copilot. And that opened my eyes to, well, first off, After Effects, but second off, and more importantly, the concept that you could even do visual effects on your home computer at all. It was a completely foreign idea to me. I was like, wait, what? Because I already had a rough mental understanding of how compositing worked. I had done a little bit of Photoshop when I was younger, not actually in Photoshop, a different program, but the same idea, right? And so I was able to, I became obsessed, and I was just watching tutorial after tutorial. Literally, I watched every single tutorial on the Video Copilot website. This is January 2009 at the time, and I had never even opened the program yet. But I'd watched every tutorial because I was obsessed. Eventually got
How old were you
a
at
cracked
the time,
version
by
of
the
it.
way?
I was like 20.
How old were you at the time?
I was like 20 years old, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. About 20 or so. Maybe just shy of 20. And so I didn't even really get my start into visual effects until I was like in the second half of college. And school was so busy at the time that I didn't have time to do a bunch of this stuff. So it was kind of just during the summers. And then once I graduated college is when I actually started taking YouTube seriously. I'm kind of fast forwarding through this story a little bit, but basically, like
what did you study though? Like, did you study art and cinema or totally different topics?
No, my
Really?
degree was in mechanical engineering.
What?
I mean, that
Okay,
explains,
that explains the Nerf gun
the
video.
Nerf drone and how you were like making it. And me and Farah were watching a video like, wait a second, this guy's like, how the fuck is he doing this? Is it just from tutorials?
No,
or
and all the videos are about scale. The nuclear video, all those
like the
equals
Attack
to
on
MC.
Titan skills? Like, okay, now it all makes sense.
Okay,
all
fine.
right. Please continue.
I have a love for science and engineering. I love how things work, and like coming out of high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life other than like I guess I'll do engineering. That seems to be something I'm good at. And you know when you're in college, you go through all the classes, you do all that stuff, but you don't really, I don't know. At least I wasn't thinking far future. It's hard for me to think a few months in advance about my life, let alone a few years in advance. So it was just like suddenly I started becoming obsessed with this video editing thing. YouTube was starting to become a thing. I remember, because my YouTube channel I made in 2006. It's coming up to 18 years old now is how old my personal YouTube channel is. And again, it was like, I wasn't really doing the YouTuber thing back then. I was literally just uploading snowboarding videos so I can share them with my friends that I went snowboarding with. That was like the extent of it. And then slowly it turned into like me uploading visual effects tests, and eventually those tests turned into like bigger tests that were basically short films. And then I started making legitimate short films, and then I started working at Corridor, and that's where I've been for the last 12 years.
Wow, let's go back a little bit to your own channel time. Did you start making money on that channel, and then you were like, I want to have this as my own business. I want to do YouTube. I don't want to become an engineer. Were there any moment that you felt that way?
There was a very specific moment, and it was a few months before I graduated college, where I was obsessed with YouTube at this point. Freddie W, Corridor Digital had been around for like a little over a year, maybe just shy of a year. That we're talking like beginning of 2011 at this point. That was when I graduated college, and I just remember thinking, this is what I want to do. I want to make videos on YouTube. This is what I want to do. But also, I kind of wanted to be a movie director. I wanted to make stories and just do that sort of thing. Everyone has like a similar vision and a dream to do that sort of thing. But it was very specifically a few months before graduating college, YouTube threw a competition, an event called YouTube Next Up. And it was basically them being like, hey, we see the future of content creators. Let's see if we can help them out. And so they did a whole competition. Everyone like joined up. You had to have like a certain amount of, you couldn't have more than a certain amount of followers or subscribers. And you had to make a video. And I managed to get into the top 100 where everyone would then publicly vote. And it was making it into that top 100 that made me realize, oh, wait, this is what I want to do. Instead of redesigning a bolt that's going to go onto a wing while I'm sitting in a cubicle, that was kind of my future, right? I actually applied to work on a nuclear submarine in Hawaii. It was a government engineering job. My grades weren't quite good enough to get like some of these nicer positions. And so it was just like, I think videos is where my heart lies, because even when I was doing engineering, I kept sneaking in as much creativity as I could, and like the professors would kind of like be like, haha, but sometimes I could tell that they were not like, they were like, this is, what are you doing, stop this is
Was it a difficult decision to study the entire college, few years about engineering, and then decide to totally change your way and go to YouTube? Were your parents, people around you, your friends, supportive of this decision?
My parents were very supportive of it. I spent a couple years making very little money. I lived in a very cheap apartment by myself. I had no furniture. I literally lived on a blow-up mattress for 2 years. My only furniture was a desk and a desk chair. Like, I'm not kidding. That
Wow.
was the extent of
And
my
this is-
furniture. So that was like
this
right
is
after I
after
moved
college?
to Los Angeles. This is after college. I had moved down to LA at the end of 2011. I actually visited Los Angeles for a week. My cousin lived in LA, and so I visited. I somehow managed to get into a Freddie W video. It was the Light Bulb Assassin video where, again, this is a long time ago, but it was like a Splinter
Yes.
Cell spoof where he would go along and just shoot out all the light bulbs, and I was like, who turned out the lights? That was my first time being in like a big YouTube video, and it kind of just like it kind of just happened. It was an accident. I got a tour of the studio, and I was just hanging out, and they had to shoot this whole video and get it released in a day, so they needed a goon. So I was there to do that. And then a couple months later, that was when I actually legitimately realized, like, yeah, I need to move to Los Angeles. I need to be around these people. And so I moved down here to LA with not really much of a plan. I literally just stuffed everything I could into my car because I went to school in Portland, Oregon. That was where I went to college.
Right.
And so literally I moved down to LA, packed as much stuff into my car as I could, got down here and was like, oh, now what? I literally had no plan.
my God.
Like the first 2 nights I lived in LA, I slept in my car in a Whole Foods parking lot because they had security and they were chill with me just like sleeping in the parking lot. I got a public storage unit to put all my stuff into until I found an apartment, which took a couple weeks. And during those 2 weeks, I slept on the couch of Full Screen, which is an old multi-channel network. I don't know if you're... they aren't really as much of a thing
I remember
anymore.
that. I remember. I had a gaming channel like many years ago, and I think I was partnered with Full Screen. I don't know because everybody
Okay.
used to do it back in the days. I don't know if people do that nowadays though.
Is it even around?
I don't know either. I've
sure.
not been with Full Screen for a while now. Like my personal YouTube endeavor has like been very low prioritized for the last decade of my life. So it's just kind of I had a lot of effort in there at the beginning, and then it's just stagnated for the last decade. But yeah, no, I that was the other thing. So the one thing was YouTube Next Up getting me into like, ooh, YouTube. But right before that, I became a YouTube partner because I had this one random video on my YouTube channel that had gone viral of me getting bit by a fish. It was a fish in like a little thing, and I was just like putting my finger around, and then it bit me. I was like, ah! That video went viral, and so Full Screen called me
my
up. I
God.
was literally one of the earliest partners that they made a YouTube partner. George Strompolis was the CEO. This is back when like the company was like 7 or 8 people, and so I moved to LA. They let me sleep on the couch in the studio, in the office that they had for like the first 2 weeks until I got an apartment. And then I was like, because I had a tiny bit of a savings from like a commercial gig I had done, and I was just kind of like floating on that. And then very quickly, very early, I started working part-time at Corridor. And I was
How did you
treating
meet?
that.
How did you meet Nico and Sam from Corridor to get into
met them-
Corridor crew, basically?
Yeah, I met them through Freddie when I visited a few months before moving here, because they worked and lived out of the same building, sort of thing. So it's just like I met all of them at once, which that was like the most I've ever been like starstruck was seeing Freddie for the first time in my life. Since then, I've seen a lot more famous people, like not more famous, but like more people who are also famous. So I've chilled out when it comes to like being starstruck, but like that was my first time. So now whenever people meet me and they get starstruck and they get like shaky and they start mumbling their speech, they don't know what to do. It's like, I get it. I've been there. Yeah, but anyway, yeah, so that was when I met Sam and Nico, and they started shooting a movie called Sync in pretty early 2012, and so they brought me on as a PA, just like a production assistant, working on stuff. That was kind of like my in, and then like a few months after that, that was when they started their behind-the-scenes channel called Sam and Nico at the time, which has since been renamed Corridor Crew, which was my personal recommendation of a name. Sam and Nico were against that name for the longest time.
How did you convince them?
It was more of like a collective convincing. At a certain point, like 2016 was when we started doing the every other day vlogs from the. That was because before then, because literally doing YouTube for the last 12 years now, YouTube has evolved so much over the years, and for YouTube itself, like how the algorithm works, how they try to promote content, how they reward content has evolved drastically. In the early days, it was all about views. If you can make a video that got a lot of views, that was how you made money. That was how the ad revenue got pushed out. And that was what incentivized short form viral content that we now see a lot on like TikTok and whatnot. That eventually kind of made way for watch time, which was like the big thing in the mid 2010s. So that was what incentivized Let's Plays. People uploading an hour-long video every single day. That was how you got rewarded on YouTube. And so our sort of style of like, we'll make a 2-minute video every other week. So that's like maybe 4 or 5 minutes of content a month. That was just not gonna work on YouTube. So we needed to find a new way to evolve to make more content. And so that was when we started making like a 3 to 6 minute video every other day. And that was a wild time. It was hard. The videos weren't as good because it was like, let's make a video about this random thing. We've since kind of evolved out of that as well, because now YouTube's in its like what I kind of consider to be its final stage, which is black magic. No, they have YouTube basically operates. So originally it was views, then it was watch time. Now it's based off of a collection of different, like not just how YouTube pays out ad revenue, but how they promote videos, because they have a very, very like black magic understanding of whether or not a person likes a video that they're watching. It's called satisfaction. And they're able to literally discern whether or not a video is good by tracking like 100 different metrics from every single video, from a viewer rather. Like, did they watch the whole thing? Did they look at the comments? Did they make a comment? How much time did they spend on this? Did they go to other videos of the channel? Did they return to the channel later? You know, all these sort of things contribute to how a video will perform on YouTube. You know, everyone is always like, they'll complain, oh, the algorithm doesn't like my stuff anymore, but that's not true. It's like the algorithm is just a reflection of the audience at this point, and it's the hardest truth now. If your video doesn't do well, it's because it's probably not a good video.
You know, when you say that, there's a couple of things I want to talk about, but I'm just going to mention that is so true. There's so many people complaining about their content not being shown, but the truth is that majority of the time they're just not doing it right. And if they understand what people like and what people consume, and you try to learn that, it takes a lot of research. It's not an easy task, which is why so many people try making content, but they fail at it. And I want to give props to you guys, every single one of you guys at Corridor, because we were watching another podcast the other day from PBD. He said that the most intimidating personality trait is to be able to last as long as possible. That person will win. So for you guys as a channel, for you guys as people who have worked in this field for a long time, the fact that you guys have been there for so many years is because you came up with the different strategies. You realize that the 2 to 3 minute videos every other week wouldn't work. So then you started the vlogs to be able to, you know, support a channel. And all of these different things that you guys do on the site. You guys have the website as well. There's a membership. You guys upload extra pieces of content there. There's so many different things that you guys do to make sure you can bring valuable content to people. And we see that. And that's one of the reasons you guys have lasted for so long. And I hope for many years to come.
Wait, listen. Did you know that you can create highly photorealistic scenes with photogrammetry by taking in what exists in the real world into 3D?
We've been using Polycam to do exactly that, using our phone and drone.
Yes, that's right. And guess what? They sponsored this video to give you guys 30% off their pro plan. So you guys can go ahead and try it for yourself.
Use the code BADDECISIONS in the link in the description.
I do want to say one thing about the time before you went to Corridor. I want to rewind the tape just a little bit. You said about No, it's all good. It's all cool. The 1 to 2 years that you said you were in a little room, you just had like a table, a desk. How were you making money at the time? And how were you staying inspired and motivated to say, you know what, I'm going to do this still? Or how long did you give yourself the runway to continue before saying, you know what, I don't think I can do this. I don't think I can pull it up, because there's only so many years you can do it without, you know, making something sustainable for yourself.
No, 100%. What I was saying earlier about YouTube Next Up being like the big catalyst, I didn't get it. So I actually didn't get into YouTube Next Up, but it was that push that gave me the confidence to try. So I spent that summer trying to make videos, and I had like a couple like small commercial gigs that were able to like pay my rent. But pretty early after moving to LA, I started working at Corridor, and that was my sole income. And it was enough for me to get by. I was spending almost no money. I wasn't making that much. It was just a part-time gig, but it was enough for me to like live off of. And I did that for like a year and a half straight and then I got into the second edition of YouTube Next Up, and they gave me a little cash to build a new computer. They gave me some gear, and I made a whole Harry Potter short film that I spent like half a year working on in my free time as much as I could. And yeah, then I actually quit Corridor there for about a little less than a year, like 8 months or so. I quit Corridor to work on, to finish that that short film, yeah. And then I made a few other short films after that, and I was trying to like, all right, this is what I want to do. I don't want to make behind the scenes videos anymore. I want to do visual effects. I want to direct stuff, and this is my chance to do it. And I was making no money. It was like not going well. And then Corridor hit me up and was like, hey, we don't want you to make BTS videos anymore. We want you to do the visual effects now. And I was like, all right. So it felt like a big upgrade to me. So I got rehired full time to do that. And we did like a Lord of the Rings short film, Shadow of Mordor. I learned how to do like liquid simulations for all like the blood hits and all this stuff. And I was obsessed with, working on these videos. And eventually I started directing some Corridor short films. I did Portal trick shots. I did Superheroes versus Gaming Heroes. These were like my first forays into directing for Corridor Digital, the YouTube channel that I had like looked up to during college, and now I'm working there. Now I'm getting to make stuff, and now I've been there for 90% of the time the company has existed, which is it's still kind of surreal for me to think about from that perspective, which is weird. But yeah, so like those first couple years there, living in LA, I actually wouldn't even have had a blow-up mattress at all if my girlfriend at the time refused to sleep on the floor with me whenever she visited, because she was living up in Oregon at the time. And so we actually did long distance for a year and a half. And eventually she moved down here once I proposed to her, and then we got married.
Wow.
But yeah, so we would visit each other like once a month. I'd fly up there for a month, or for like a few days once a month, and she'd fly down here the next month, and so that I was able to like maintain that. But after a little while, I was like, I'm tired of saying goodbye. Let's just move down here. Let's just.
Can you move here? Yeah, can you move down here?
Yeah.
Wow, that's very interesting. You've been at Corridor for a long time now, and you've seen different phases, different styles of video that you guys have made. Today, or let's just say last month, what does a day look like at Corridor Digital?
Oh boy. So we usually start around 10:30 or so in the morning. That way we kind of are able to skirt around the rush hour traffic of Los Angeles, and we usually work till about like 6:30 or 7. And yeah, I'll usually show up. I like to make a little to-do list for the day for like the things that I need, like the tasks I need to get done. I make like a little checklist type thing. We'll do some meetings sometimes. It depends. Like every day of the week is very different. Like Mondays we always start out with a big company-wide meeting, and it's like I don't know, a dozen of us now, 15 of us. We just kind of sit around, kind of discuss what our weekly plan, what our plans are for the whole week. Kind of go through person by person, kind of just so that we're all kind of on the same page. And then we'll break out into brainstorming sessions after that, where we're just like, all right, we have to come up with new video ideas. Let's just brainstorm some stuff. Maybe like solidify some ideas on some stuff that is happening like that week or the next week. And yeah, then once everyone kind of has their marching orders, we kind of just get to it. Sometimes that means we're filming. Sometimes that means we're sitting at our computers and doing stuff. For me, I spend most of my time just at my desk on my computer. Usually either researching or writing or doing some visual effects. It depends on which part of the project I'm in, right? Like these scale videos take a lot of research and writing time, and that's the part the writing aspect of things is what I'm slowest at. It's hard to kind of get my specific word choice and pick what not to talk about, because I always want to talk about everything. Yeah. And then
wow.
And then once then we get into production. Like the easiest part of everything for me are the visual effects. Like I can do visual effects all day. Like tell me what to do and I can just do that. Me deciding what I need to do to accomplish something is infinitely harder. So my favorite part of the process is when it's like, all right, we got a locked edit. I have all the shots I need to do. Now it's just like, all right, just start knocking them off the list. All right, here's the next shot I got to get. And that's, go through and you do that. And I don't have to make any of the high level decisions. That's the hardest thing for me as well. Like, okay, do I decide to do this part for the video? How are we going to do that? It's like, that is so much harder to do than people really realize, I think.
I agree with you so much. It's the same thing for us as well. When we're working on any YouTube video or any project, the most favorite part for me is when we know exactly what the shots are and I'm in Unreal Engine. I'm like, okay, all right. And now I know what I actually have to do. It's pretty clear. It might be the most challenging part of the project, but at least I know it's clear to me what I need to do, and I actually do enjoy being inside Unreal. So I agree with you with that, but I think we have to ask you. I mean, me and Farah have been talking about this for so many days now. Let's talk about the scale videos, because those are our favorites.
Those are the best, really.
The nuclear one was our favorite. The nuclear one, I mean, the way you presented the information was just fantastic. When you were talking about the E equals MC square, when you were just simplifying it down, breaking it down, so even the stupidest person can sometimes understand what all of these different technicalities are, and you made it so simple and enjoyable to watch. So can you walk us through exactly how you start a project like that? Because that video is a giant video.
Let's talk about the Los Angeles nuclear video, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's our favorite video, by the way.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah, no, that video is a specific. It's particularly a good one for me because I started writing that video a year and a half before that video came out. It was like early 2022 that I started working on that video, and I spent a lot of time researching, scripting, re-scripting again, re-scripting yet again, doing more research, and then eventually gave up. I failed. I could not figure out how to make an entertaining video about weapons of mass destruction without leaving viewers with existential dread. I could not do it. It was very difficult because it's like, you know, I like to make these videos and be like, how cool is this? How cool is that?
Yes.
Oh, this thing also killed 100,000 people. Like, it's not so cool anymore.
Yeah.
And so it was so difficult for me to like try to find that path. And so I gave up on it. I slept on it for over a year. And then eventually I was like, all right, no, I think it's time to revisit this. There's a time where it was going to be like 2 different videos. Was it after watching Oppenheimer?
Was it after watching Oppenheimer, or was it during that time?
It was during that time.
Or it has nothing to do with Oppenheimer?
It does, though. It does. It was before Oppenheimer came out. You know, it's one of those things. As a YouTuber, you know, you got to think marketing on all your videos. Like when I come up with a video idea, we try to make a habit of trying to think of the thumbnail and the title first, because if no one clicks on your video because the thumbnail or title wasn't good enough, then it doesn't matter how good your video is because no one sees it. And so it's the necessary evil of YouTube or content creation in general. So many people is like, I want to make a good video, and they do. They make a great video, but then they give it the most uninteresting sort of pitch that no one clicks on, and then you're not making videos anymore because no one watched your videos.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely.
So the point I'm getting to is that Oppenheimer's coming out this summer, so I'm like, you know what? I think it's time to revisit this nuke video, because the video I wanted to talk about that first nuke, which Oppenheimer was about, not actually. Oppenheimer's about the guy who made the nuke, but I thought it'd be really good marketing. Like, oh, tied in. People are like, the zeitgeist is all about nukes and Oppenheimer right now. I can put another, and you see this across the board. So many other people were making nuclear bomb videos. Kirchstad made a couple nuke videos. Other, you know, Veritasium, I think, made a nuke video. It's like, the zeitgeist is something, you want to make stuff that is timeless, that is not relevant to the zeitgeist, so that it can continue to live on through time. But having like a big zeitgeist moment that you can tap into will always help. You just got to be sure it's something that is still, you know, timeless. So I always try to make my videos as good today as they were when I made them. If that makes sense. So yeah, the nuke video, right?
That does.
I spent a lot of time writing that one, and eventually it got time to like, okay, now we got to make this a thing. So I started working with my coworker Daniel, who I'd basically done all of my scale videos last year with the exception of the Universal logo one. And yeah, we did Ants, we did Pluto, we did that one, we did Titans, Titans 2 specifically. He's very good at finding like a story and finding like character story type stuff. And so he's very good at also like finding the best side of me. So we'll record a bunch of takes and he'll like be able to pull out like the best moments from that stuff. And we work together on how to figure out that ending, which is kind of on the sappy side of things, where it's like we're like two world countries were able to put aside their differences, and you know, like however that ended, because I could not for the life of me figure out how do we end this video without people being like, well, we're screwed.
Yeah. You're gonna die.
I don't know, it was hard, man.
You're gonna die.
But yeah, and like for a while there, I wanted to make a video entirely dedicated to the first millisecond of a nuclear bomb, or the first second of a nuclear bomb, which I ended up going into in that video. It was a big chunk in the middle. But I also wanted to make a video about like the actual scale of nukes. It's like, all right, this one's this big, this one's that big, and on and so forth. I think we ended up doing a really good job of finding like the path, navigating through all of that stuff. And once we kind of got like a good script more or less ready to go, that's when we started production. But the script wasn't done yet. Like, we literally had already filmed more than half the video before, like, the ending had even been... We'd even decided what the ending was going to be. There's a whole section where I'm, like, sitting at my desk talking about, like, nuke maps and, like, the scale of that stuff. That came after, like, the script... I had already started the script, and we had already started shooting most of the rest of the video. And... Yeah, it's just... I find a lot of my videos work out best when I just go straight into production. That forces me to have something ready to go. It's like I can spend forever talking or trying to figure out the perfect script, but once there's a deadline involved, that's when things actually start happening. It's like, hey, I need to film this thing tomorrow. It doesn't matter how much I'm struggling with like this section of the script that I got to film tomorrow. It's like we're filming tomorrow. Like, I gotta get there. And sure enough, every time, inevitably, I get there.
Just out of curiosity, when you started the idea, I mean, not initially, because you said this was like a year and a half in production in terms of the research. When you said, okay, let's do this, how much of a deadline did you give yourself to finish a video?
That one I had a decent amount of time, actually. I had like over a month for that one. It was like maybe 5 or 6 weeks, which is uncommon for us at Corridor. We usually, especially last year and all the years up to this point, it's like trying to release a video two videos every single week, because we have a VFX Artist React episode coming out every single Saturday.
Yes.
That does take a decent amount of my time. It's at least 20% of my time. It's basically a full day whenever we do that. And that's a whole process we can get into as well, doing the research for that and then shooting that. And then you're just kind of spent for the rest of the day. You're not really effective for anything else after we shoot React. Because, man, those shooting sessions are like so mentally draining that like once you're done, you're just like, I can't do anything else. And I still have to. And you buckle up and you just do what you got to do sometimes. But yeah, so... Yeah, it took about a month for that video. Sometimes we try to spend no more than 2 weeks on a video. That's usually our cadence. We try to come up with videos that are easily shootable and editable within like a 1 to 2 week span, which is why we do a lot of like satisfying renders. We do like the bowling alley animations. We do like random little experiments here and there. And that's just so we can pump out content more regularly while still maintaining like a bar of quality. It's like you don't want to just like make bad stuff. You don't want to do that either.
Yeah.
But you can't just if you're only making one video a month, that's 12 videos a year. You have to be getting like millions of views on every video in order to like make a living. It's like not all of us can be Mark Rober. Not all of us can get 10, 20 million views per video and be like, yeah, I'll probably get that much. So, if you're going to be getting less views, you have to make more content. And that butts right up against the type of content that we make, which takes a lot of post-production effort. And not many people fully appreciate how much time that takes. So yeah, I'm fortunate in that like I've earned the right to take more time on these videos because they do have a track record of doing well. And so, the first few scale videos I did, I was able to do those in like a couple weeks. Like Scale of Rockets are one of our most successful videos of all time. I literally made by myself in under 2 weeks, and that was the Scale of the Universe. And the visual effects side of that was like I'm tracking in 3D balls, like. So like the origin. If you want to know the origin story of the Scale series, I can tell you that too. Because I burned out. I got tired. I was not happy anymore. Because we're still in this phase where we're doing. So yeah, I mentioned earlier the vlog started in 2016 as a direct result of the YouTube landscape kind of changing because we were doing the short films every other week and a behind the scenes video for each short film. And And then we're doing the vlogs in addition to the short films, and every time the short film will come out, that vlog would be the behind the scenes for it. But we kind of fell into this cadence where I would be doing all of the visual effects for every short, and right as I'm done doing the visual effects for the short, the next video in line had already been shot and it had already been finished edited. So I had basically the entire next film I could begin working on immediately, and then it was just rinse and repeat. And so now I keep working on these videos that I didn't have the creative control that I would have liked to have had. Like, I didn't direct any of these videos. I didn't come up with them. I didn't write the scripts for them. They weren't my jokes or anything. And obviously I'm creatively contributing by doing the visual effects, but I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I got to change this up. And so I started thinking about what I am good at, and I came up with 3 things. 1, I'm good at visual effects. I can do visual effects great. 2, I've become good at being on camera, which is not an inherent skill. It's not an inherent talent for me. I had to learn how to be good on camera, and that took a decade. It took, I'm still learning. I'm always learning. It's like you never just plateau and you're done. Like, I've gotten good at being on camera. I know how to like perform. I know how to like ratchet myself up a little bit, and it's entirely based on what I'm proud of, which is it's mostly me. I'm heightening my personality a little bit, but I am basically 90% exactly the same off camera as I am on camera. And that's my secret is I just like I try to be myself, and I try to just be unapologetically myself, and that resonated with people. So that's the second thing I found out that I was good at. I was like, okay, I can host videos. The third thing is that I'm like, wait a minute, I understand science and math and engineering. How can I take these concepts and explain them to people in a way that is easily digestible? So my mantra was like, how can I take something that is easy to understand, but perhaps not well understood? You know, it's like, okay, scale is one of those things. So many people will be like, oh, like smart people are like, oh, I don't intuitively understand how big that thing is. So I was like, oh, okay, I can help explain this to you by using visuals to support that. And that was like my whole thing. And so, because I remember learning how big rockets were, because you see rockets and they're just like these like sticks, right? They're just like, oh, that's like a tall thing. But it's not until you realize like, oh no, they're like a 10-story building. They're huge. Like, they're absolutely huge. It blew my mind when I learned how big they actually were, and I was like, the world has to know. And so that was kind of how the whole series really started.
It's so true. You have to compare to something people already know for people to fully realize the significance of that object or how big it is. Even in 3D, when you want to show how big an object is in the scene, you put a little human beside it and you're like, oh, okay, now it makes sense. I visually understand. And you do that in a 20-minute long video by just constantly comparing all of these
different elements.
Yes.
If you put 1,000 ants on top of each other, how heavy it would be, how tall it would be.
The ants, when you dropped it and then it turned into liquid, I'm like, oh my god, how you guys have to spend time doing that VFX shot? Like, oh my god,
that was a 7 terabyte simulation.
No,
what the fuck? 7 terabyte simulation?
Yeah, so my buddy Jordan from Corridor, he actually did the whole simulation. He did it in Houdini, and he had to like simulate so many millions of particles. It was like 20 million particles. Wow. Just to get like that sort of fidelity at that type of scale, because the scale, it's the size of a city. You can't just have it operate on the scale of like a house. You have to have it operate on the scale of a city, and so to do that, you had to get a lot more particles. And he cashed it out as like an Olympic sequence type thing, and it was literally like 6.7 terabytes of data just for that simulation.
Crazy.
Yeah, it was a whole thing.
Okay,
it was a whole thing.
For all these scaled videos, the VFX is amazing.
Can I just pause you over there? We don't even have that size of SSD in our place to run that fucking thing. We can never make that video, bro. I just realized.
Oh my God, that's so sad.
We need to upgrade our equipment.
Oh my God, that's so sad.
We can't even make that video. That's why we are not as successful, man.
We
don't have enough storage.
Video. Okay, we are not going to do scale videos. Do other type of videos. But going back to the scale videos, the VFX is amazing, no question. The story is great. But how do you simplify the concept? I think that is the most important part, because as you mentioned, there were a lot of nukes videos at the time. There were a lot of other videos similar to what you have been doing. But the way you simplify everything, you break it down to the small pieces that everybody can understand. What is the process like to make that happen?
So this one I learned from Carmichael. He was adamant in the early days. One of the earliest examples of this was I built a battery pack for my electric skateboard so I can go further. It was like Tesla batteries on an electric skateboard. It was one of our earlier like vlog videos that kind of blew up. It was like me building something, and I took some time to explain how batteries work, and because I needed to explain why I was making this other battery rather than the built-in battery of the board. And I went through this whole sequence explaining it, and I used like water coming out of water bottles as like a metaphor or a visual sort of thing. And because Carmichael kept pushing, you need to make this understandable for Joe at the gas station. That was his mantra. It's like, my audience needs to be someone who kind of like least common denominator. It's not like I'm making videos for stupid people, but I need to make videos that are understandable by people who don't have like engineering degrees. I need to make something understandable by everyone. And to do that, I have to physically force myself to rein back my assumptions of what people know. And once you do that enough, you start really identifying the core point that I'm trying to make. And so like the nuke video, for instance, I didn't really want to go too deep into any of the sort of science behind how nukes work, but I did want to cover why nukes were so much more powerful than any other explosion. It was a complete paradigm shift in humanity, because it was like, it wasn't just like one order of magnitude. It wasn't like 10 times more explosive. It was like 100 or 1,000 times more. We went from like going up this like linear progression to all of a sudden
exploded. Yeah.
And it's like, I needed to contextualize why that was a big deal. And to do that, I needed to explain how nukes worked. Nuclear physics is complicated. I don't understand it. I have a very, very like surface level understanding, which I had to do a bunch of research on so I could understand how to break it down. And so I realized the main point I needed to communicate was that like nukes work off of like fission/fusion, splitting the atom, right? But really what it comes down to is converting mass into energy. That was the key thing. And so that was what I wanted to explain. Because that was a mind-blowing thing as well. How much mass you need to make a huge amount of energy. I found that to be a really compelling concept. And so that's what I tried to dive into. E equals MC squared is the most famous equation on the planet. You don't even need to understand equations to have heard that phrase before. E equals MC squared. But really, I was like, okay, how do we explain this? It basically just means energy and like matter are the same thing. You can convert between them. It's like water and ice. They're technically kind of the same thing, right? So that was where I was going for that. I was like, I need to explain this because I've struggled in the past trying to explain high-level concepts. I did a video about how many solar panels could power the world. That was probably the most challenging video I've ever made. Both from like a writing standpoint and a production standpoint. I did 4 or 5 all-nighters in a row to get that thing done at the end, which nearly killed me. Don't recommend it. But because it was like, all right, I want to talk about how many solar panels could power the world, but the answer to that is kind of meaningless because it's such a complicated concept and idea. It's like you can have all these solar panels, but that only powers like half the world at a time. Because it's like, what if the sun's not there? Okay, now you got to introduce like batteries into it and like energy storage and all this stuff. And I really wanted to explain all of this stuff. I wanted to go through all of it. And it was so hard. Wow. It was so oppressively hard. So I've been trying to shy away from doing those types of videos. Because it's also very hard to talk about a video like that without going into like talking about climate change, which I'm a staunch believer in. And it's hard to not start becoming like preachy and like, do your part. Yeah, I don't know. It's I have to keep reminding myself, take a step back. Just.
I wanted to ask you about the burnout because that's what you mentioned first when we asked you about the scale videos, because so many artists go through that, and the burnout sometimes causes artists to give up on their passion, their dream. How did you find this? When you said you found the 3, And did you immediately start acting on it? The 3 things that you knew you were good at. Did you immediately start acting on it? And did you know, okay, this is what I want to do? And did you immediately realize and felt the passion again that, okay, yeah, this is really fun? Or no, it took a while for you to understand. You had to see people's reaction to it and all that. I just want to find out exactly how you went through that burnout process and how you overcame it.
I don't know if I have a good answer to that. It wasn't immediate. It took a little bit of time, like maybe 2 to 4 months, somewhere in that range, before I actually made that first scale video. Because it was like the end of the year. We had just made a video about Apple's like emojis, like the little like animated faces, and we put them on a bunch of like TV shows and movies and stuff. It was just like a little thing. And I was just like, after that, like, I liked the video, it was good, but it kind of killed me inside. I was just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And so I spent a bunch of time kind of figuring out, what do I want in life? What do I want to do? And all this stuff. But meanwhile, I also still had a really good job. It's not like I was just going to quit. And so I kept doing the job. We kept making videos. And then once, I kind of just worked through the burnout. And I think burnout manifests differently for different people, and I think there's a misconception with burnout. People associate burnout with exhaustion, and I don't think that's true. Sometimes you can be very exhausted, and you can be like, I'm burned out, I don't want to do this anymore, I'm just tired, I need a vacation. And not that that's not burnout, but I think that's also just a lot of exhaustion, like you're overstressed and whatnot. For me, I think what burnout really is loss of passion. It's like you just kind of don't care as much anymore. You don't have any interest in it anymore, and that is kind of tragic, and that's when you combine that with exhaustion, that's when it gets really bad. But I think burnout at its core is just like you've been doing the same thing for a little too long, you're bored, and you don't have that passion anymore. And so finding something else that you can be passionate about to give you meaning, to give you like a reason to like go into work and be like, I'm going to do this thing. I don't know. It's a very hard thing to try to navigate and figure out. Sometimes you might just need to take a bunch of time off and figure out what that is. Maybe, I don't know. Work on something different. I always get a little bit of cabin fever whenever I work on the same project for too long. Which is why I feel like what I've been doing at Corridor for the last decade has been wonderful, because I work on a huge variety of stuff. 1 month I'll be making a 3D printed drone. The next month I'm doing visual effects for a short film. The next month after that I'm exploring an old visual effects technique from 30 years ago. The week after that I'm flying drones. Like it just changes so often for me what I get to do, and that helps a lot. It really does.
Yes.
But I mean, I don't know.
If I may, I just want to say that I feel like one of the best ways to avoid burnout is to constantly learn. I find that to be true for myself, that anytime I feel like I might be either exhausted, and I feel like overexhaustion for a long period of time can lead to burnout if you're exhausting yourself for a very, very long time. But I feel like the burnout can be avoided if you're constantly learning something. If you look at some of the people who usually get burned out, they're not learning anything new. They're just doing the same thing over and over again. And they're not being challenged. I feel like the challenge is extremely important in any line of job. Yeah. You might be a chef, right? You have to learn how to cook different foods. If you cook the same food every day, you're going to get bored, right? Because you're not getting better and 100%. Better. Even if you're the best at it, people are going to respect you, and that respect is just going to feel the same after 5 years. You want to learn and fail, right? That's the first thing. You got to fail a couple of times and then get good at something else. And that's what we do in terms of 3D. It's usually with softwares. Like it was Blender. Then, okay, that was great, but then it wasn't challenging enough. Let's go to Unreal. And then after that, now we're thinking Houdini. So, we want to keep going for another challenge. So I feel like that's, in my opinion, at least the best way to avoid it. But I'm glad that you found the scale videos to be what helped you eventually.
Yeah, at least in for that. And but they were also just so hard to make. Like the first year I did them, I only made like 3 or so, and they all did really well. And so then the next year, we're going into 2019 at this point, 2018, 2019. The plan was to make 12 of them that year, one for every month, and I ended up making like 5. It was like,
those are huge projects
because it's so hard. Yeah, it's like if it was the only thing I was doing, I could perhaps do that, but it's like I also got to be on all these other crew videos. React was starting, I got to do that every week, and it's like the time I have to dedicate to other projects like that is just like it's not as much. So it's like that's why these videos don't come out as often, because they take a lot of time. And honestly, with every video, I'm always trying to take less time.
What is your favorite kind of video to make nowadays? What is like the favorite thing you're working on nowadays?
Man, I don't know. It's like, I just did it. I want to do more physical-based projects, like with 3D printing. Last month I did a video. So a friend of mine lost his finger. He's missing a finger.
The lighter video, right?
Yeah. So we did a video where I 3D printed him a new finger, and then a couple years ago we did another video where we made a Nerf blaster finger. He could shoot Nerf darts out of it. Then we revisited at the beginning of the year to give him a lighter, because I found like these tiny little lighters. I was like, I could change this 3D print to include the lighter, so you can have a little pinky lighter. Just a dumb little idea, but it was a very rewarding challenge of like, okay, I got to actually make something that physically works. And so unlike visual effects, where it's like you kind of get the shot done, maybe you do a V2, maybe you do a V3, changing small stuff here and there, but for the most part, as you're going, you're seeing what it is. And then when you're happy with it, it's done. Whereas a physical thing that you got to like design and print, it requires a lot more iteration. And so I'll make something, I'm like, oh, that doesn't work. So I'll make the changes and I'll print it. I'm like, oh, that still doesn't quite work, but we're closer. I love that process. That's what I think have fallen back in love with again, was 3D printing and like the iterating of designs. So I kind of want to do a second Nerf drone that we did a few years back, 4 years ago actually. And I've had the plan for the second Nerf drone for years now. It's basically,
how are you gonna do it? I don't do it.
So it'd be a much bigger drone, an octocopter with 4 arms. I don't know how familiar you guys are with like racing drones or cinema drones or anything like that, but basically it's just a big beefy drone with 2 propellers on each arm, one up, one down. And they're meant to carry like cinema cameras. So they carry a lot of weight while still being nimble like a racing drone. And so that was the concept, is taking that and combining it with like a camera gimbal. So the gimbal would hang underneath it that can move around and whatnot, and we would mount a Nerf gun to that.
Wow.
There's
We
this YouTube
played
channel
with a drone, I think it was... Sorry, there was
Alta
X or Alta X. Is it the same
Okay, yeah.
size as those drones? Okay.
It'd be a lot smaller than the Alta. The Alta is massive. Have you seen an Alta in person before?
Yes.
Yeah,
We
okay,
saw
so
it
you know
fly
how
in front
big
of
they're
us.
like.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like a helicopter.
It's like, is that a
giant and-
go-kart or a drone?
Yes.
It's so big.
Crazy.
But that's
crazy.
the concept. The ones I'm thinking of are quite a bit smaller footprint-wise, but because they have 8 propellers, they still pack a lot of power. And so the idea is to put a gimbal underneath it with a blaster mounted to the gimbal, and then on top of it would be a giant bucket, like a 5-gallon bucket of those little rival yellow Nerf balls. And it'd be a Gatling gun, essentially, a machine gun blaster, just firing out like 10 balls a second, just like... So that's like,
Oh my god.
there's a YouTube channel called Out of Darts that I've been talking with. I haven't talked with in a couple years. That's when the last time we like pursued this concept. It was just going to take way too much time, and so I didn't have the bandwidth to really like pursue this idea. So I'm hoping this year that might be different. But yeah, he's got it's I think called the Proton Pack. I would basically utilize that design, integrate that into the drone. But my favorite part about this concept is that the gimbal itself would be motion controlled from like a screen. So I'd have a screen down on the ground. So it'd be 2 pilots, one person piloting the actual drone, the other person operating the blaster.
The machine gun.
Wow, that's going to be amazing.
Yeah, so the screen, there'd be an FPV camera on the blaster connected to a screen, so I can see the aiming of the blaster, but when I rotate that screen, it moves the gimbal as well. And so I'd mount that screen to an actual Nerf blaster, so I can be like, aim like this, aiming a drone blaster up in the sky like this, and whenever I pull the trigger, it shoots the blaster on the drone. My friend Nerk FPV would be the pilot for it. That was like, again, maybe things will change, but that was the idea back in the day. And then basically do round 2, Jan, my buddy Jan, would come back and try to like... The magic of the first video was that the entire battle was real. Like, it was legitimately nothing staged, nothing like... He was legitimately trying to destroy my drone. throwing axes, and none of us knew how it would work out. And so when it worked out the way it did, I could not have even hoped for anything better than that. It was not possible to hope for anything better than that.
You headshotted him.
I think is
you
my
headshotted him in that
Yeah.
video.
Yeah.
That was crazy. That was like a headshot. I didn't expect it. And the axe came so close so many
the
times.
shot was so good. The one that the axe was so close to hit the drone.
Yeah.
So for anybody that is listening and watching, we will put a link of that video in the description. Please check it out. It is one of the best videos. Please continue.
Can't wait
Wren.
for part 2 actually.
Yeah, I would love to see this next update to the giant drone. I that's gonna be
Yeah.
amazing. It's like every kid's dream to ever have anything like that.
Totally, yeah. So I'm really excited about that video. I hope we can do that one this year. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm most passionate about right now. I'm actually working on a video right now about the true scale of mountains. So like we were talking about earlier with like learning new stuff, I actually for this project started learning Unreal Engine like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So in the past I had put a couple different attempts into learning Unreal because is like, okay, I should probably learn how to do this, but I didn't have a project behind it to force me through it. So it's like I'd follow a tutorial and I inevitably would just kind of stop caring. It's like, whatever, I'll come back to this. And then like I never do. For me, it's most important if you're trying to learn a new program to make something with it. It's like you have to set out with the goal. All right, I want to make this thing. And it's important to me to do this thing. But to do this, I have to navigate this program. And so that is the thing that sort of pushes me through learning something, because learning a new program is very hard. Especially now that I'm older and my brain is a little less plastic, it's harder for me to learn new things. And so it's oh my god, especially Unreal. Screw this freaking program, man. It's so intimidating. There's so many options.
Okay. Like we have Houdini, okay? If you wanna talk about
Blame
something complex,
anybody.
talk about Houdini, man.
I also
Unreal's
started learning Houdini a couple years ago. I sat down, I started following tutorials. I opened up the program, I started going through it, and I made like a small thing, but it was just everything was so complicated, and like I kind of understand the whole node system and how and why it's broken out like that. It's like Cinema 4D is a great program for modeling a chair. Houdini is a great program for modeling a chair factory. That's kind of like how Houdini is. It's like it's a factory of a program. But it's still like a 3D program at the end of the day. Whereas Unreal is a game engine. It's meant for making games, not for making like 3D stuff. That is obviously changing over time as they focus more and more on film and now with their new motion graphics update. But like, yeah, I was like, okay, fine, because the Cesium plugin, like so Google Maps being loaded up in Unreal, because for years I've been doing all my scale videos using a Google program called Earth Studio. It's basically just Google Earth, and you can make your own little camera moves and render out these like high resolution shots of the 3D landscape that Google makes. And it was like, okay, this is how I can do these super massive drone shots that are impossible to get because I'm like going from orbit or whatever. But it looks so much better Unreal. So I was like, okay, it's time. It's finally time I dive into it. And the day I made that decision, I opened up my YouTube channel and 2 new videos popped up. The first 2 videos of a series teaching beginners how to use Unreal from a little studio called Bad Decisions. So I started watching those videos, and there's tons of Unreal videos, tutorials on the internet, and I've watched a lot of them too, but you guys have such good personality and charisma and attitude that I was like, I gotta stick around. This is fun. I didn't actually follow the tutorial. Like, I didn't actually open up and start trying to make my own Star Wars, ship and stuff like that. But I did watch every single video.
Oh my god, that's crazy. That's amazing.
I was one of those people on episode 19 where like, you're the real ones. You made it this far. You saw everyone like, you're the tread. I'm sitting here being like, yeah, I am.
Yeah, you didn't give up. Oh my god, that means a lot. Wow,
I
wouldn't expect that.
Yeah,
honestly.
I would not expect that. That feels so. What do you think about Unreal Engine now that you've watched this beautiful series on YouTube?
It's pretty great. Not gonna lie. It took some time, but I feel like I finally figured out all the good settings for using the Cesium plugin too, like ultra dynamic skies, getting the distant height fog correct, and all this stuff. It was like getting the tiles loaded at the correct resolution. Once I got that going and I was able to actually start kicking out cool looking shots, that's when I was like, all right, this is pretty sweet. But the reason why Unreal was so hard for me to learn is because it's so unintuitive for me as a 3D artist. You know, it's not like Cinema 4D. It's not like After Effects. Because it's meant for multiple hundred people working on the same project file. So everything is kind of just like file-based, like file browser-based. Like when you make a change, it's actually adjusting. I mean, who am I explaining this to? You guys know.
No, but it's good.
like,
It's good. There's
just
some
the way
people
everything
watching and
works with, like-
listening. There's some people
like
watching and listening who don't use Unreal. So it's good that you're explaining that.
But like, yeah, the way materials work is just a little bit different. Like the browser, the concept of the sequencer is weird to me. Like I get it now. Like the timeline I can understand. I totally intuitively understand keyframes and curve editors and layers within the sequencer, but like having to make the sequencer and actually make sure my sequencer is in the level so that everything actually loads properly when you hit play. So like my renders were coming out and everything was loading for the first like second or two of my render. I'm like, why? And it was like, and then you Google the problem and you're like, and then you go back to Unreal Engine. You've got literally a list of 1,000 different options, and it's just one checkbox within there that you got to click that. Then everything's fixed for that one problem. Rinse and repeat. Now you got another problem that you got to find that one little setting to adjust.
Dude,
learning the favorites button was a big deal for me.
You know what's the most annoying thing? Sometimes you're working with metahumans, and in the viewport, the metahuman looks great. And then we render it, and then it's like all fucked up and messed up. We're like, wait, I don't get it. It's supposed to be the opposite. It's supposed to be the viewport that is shitty, and then you render it with a higher res, and it's beautiful. But then when it's rendering, it's using different anti-aliasing techniques, and you got to put in all these console variables. And that is what I think a lot of developers love to use, because then they have full control. But as someone who's used Blender or Cinema 4D or other softwares, you just want to get what you're getting in your viewport, but better in your render. You just want it to be easy and simple. I guess they're working towards that slowly. That's what they're trying to do. But of course, going from a game engine to what now everybody in any industry wants to actually use, it must have been a difficult shift for them. And I understand the irritation and the tense moments. But I'm glad you got into Unreal, man. It's awesome. Are you going to be using it for all of these scale videos now?
I mean, I'm going to try. Like, I did a video last December about the true scale of Attack on Titan Part 2. Yeah. And
Part 2.
Not to spoil Attack on Titan too much, but basically there's this Titan that there's a lot of in the whole in the thing. So I needed a way to like clone these guys a lot, and I was using Cinema 4D and Octane to do all these renders, but like, man, if I was making that video now, I would use Unreal for it, because I could just import like this model of this Titan just walking and put him in the city of, you know, LA or any city on the world using this. Like, honestly, it's the cesium plugin that I've truly fallen in love with for Unreal, because I don't have to worry too much about like the modeling or lighting side just yet. And so it's like my understanding of Unreal is just enough that I can kick out shots, but it's so like superficial and surface level still that like anything else. But like I have to just kind of continue using it this year. I have to like try to use it as much as I can, and just the fact that it renders so fast, it feels like I don't have to waste or consider time for rendering. Whereas before, it's like I would work all day in a shot in Cinema 4D so that I can be ready to render it by the time the day is over, so I can render all night. And by the time I'm there in the next morning, I can now composite that shot and then work on the next shot for the rest of the day, get that render overnight. And so I was like, my cadence was maybe 1 or 2 shots a day using Cinema 4D, depending on the you know, the scale of the shot. But like Unreal, it's so fast at rendering, and the fact that it like basically looks final in the viewport is just very rewarding and satisfying. There's this term that I've been using for the last few years called informed intent that I love, because people visual effects have been getting a bad rap lately, like the last few years. There's this whole like anti-movement against CGI, like, oh, it's all practical is best. Did you see that, you know, Tom Cruise movie with all the real jets that they used? You can't fake that. You can't, you know, you can feel when it's fake. Top Gun Maverick, you could feel that was all done practically, and then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, there are 2,500 VFX shots. Not
yes, exactly.
Yes.
So obviously you can't tell because you couldn't, because of what you just said. So it's like, It's the idea of everyone being on the same page. So informed intent, I started thinking about when like the Mandalorian season 1 came out and everyone became known, or everyone became aware of like the LED wall, the volume stage, which was like a really cool idea. People are like, oh, you can just film it for real. And I've since learned about all the downsides to it. It's not as much of a dream solution as people kind of initially thought it would be, but it does do a couple things that most people aren't really fully considering that you can never really fully replicate with a green screen studio type setup, which is the idea that everyone is seeing the same thing. Everyone's on the same page. The director is like, okay, I like this. The cinematographer is like, okay, I like this composition, as opposed to there being a green screen and then being like, I guess I'll decide later. I'll push that decision downstream. Like the less you can push decisions downstream, the better, the more everyone's on the same page. And so that's what I like about Unreal, is that like I can compose a shot because it's like, oh, this is beautiful right here. I can get like that thing in the distance, as opposed to like Cinema 4D where I'm roughly like mocking up a shot and then I like turn on the renderer and then I'm like, okay, I can kind of see it there, but I have to wait for a few seconds for the render to start looking like clear enough. And I'm like, okay, then I make my adjustments, wait. With Unreal, it's all just like immediately there. So yeah, the informed intent idea is all about just being able to be informed about what the intent is. It's as simple as that. I've been wanting to make a video essay about this for years now, and one of these days I'll actually do it. We'll see.
Oh, you should. I think it's a very cool concept, and it goes back to the story and tools. How you're gonna use the tools to tell your story. So I think what different softwares you use, what different tool you use to tell your story, that is very, very important.
Yes, no, absolutely. And you mentioned something really interesting about VFX. Me and Farah definitely wanted to bring this up. One, because you guys spoke to Gareth recently for The Creator, and also at the same time, which was an awesome, by the way, freaking video.
Yeah, it was
so
amazing.
many things we found out about, and I'm going to get to that in a second. You also had a TEDx talk. Also an amazing conversation. We're going to put the link down below, so because you talked about VFX in general, and also why sometimes they're good, why sometimes they're not, and also how good CGI, sometimes you don't even notice it. That's what makes it great, because you're so immersed in the story, you don't really notice that they've used CGI. So I agree with you. There's been a lot of people talking about this over the past few years, and I believe it's because of the fact that some of the recent movies that have gone out, to the public, you can sort of tell they're just doing the movie. I mean, the guys who, not the VFX artists, but the people at the top are just doing the movie for profit, because they're probably just pushing everybody to finish everything quicker.
Squeezing timelines, lowering budgets.
Yeah, so you see that in the end result, and then you're like, okay, there's no real story here. The VFX and CGI is not that great. But then comes something like The Creator, and this blew my mind. I had no idea when I saw the VFX React and how they shot everything, and then only later they decided who's gonna be the robot.
That was craziest thing.
What the fuck? Like, how do you even go about doing a video? Like, what did you think about that? Because his method of making that movie is so different, and it turned out to be so good. And other movies are not like that. Like, a lot of the other movies are not like that. What is your thought process when you heard that on the couch?
I could relate. That was the biggest thought process there, is that like, wow, Gareth Edwards represents the best of Corridor. Like, that was our whole like mantra. It's like, all right, we don't have the budget to do whatever we want. We have to cut corners everywhere, and we have to do it in a way that makes it seem like we're not cutting corners. How do we pull this off? And it's like the idea of choosing who's going to be a robot later sounds like pushing decisions downstream, because it is, but it's strategically so. It's like, it's very strategically like, okay, what's important right now is that we get the shot. We don't want to have, like, the biggest thing he told, the biggest takeaway I had was his point about, like, there's a shot they had where this robot is, like, sifting grain through their hand.
Oh,
and it's
my
like
God,
this robotic hand, and grain's falling around it into the little, like, little bucket thing. And his whole point was that, like, if this was a planned shot from the beginning, it would have gone through all of these stages of approval and refinement, and at a certain point, it would have just been like, is this shot even worth it? it's like, after all that effort, no, it's not worth it. But he was just like, I'm just going to get this shot because as a visual effects artist, I know how much work it would require to do this. It's like, just, roto animate the hand, paint out the hand and replace it with the CG hand. So you have like the animation from it and it matches perfectly, all that. And you can do, it's a very standard process that is very reactionary to what you get, what you capture. And that's how we've always done our YouTube videos. We'll have like a rough plan for like how the YouTube video should go. And I'm talking about like our short films, right? Not like our crew videos. Sometimes if it requires a little bit more finesse and choreography, we'll do like a video board, but we'll never like storyboard anything. We'll just like roughly like shoot sort of the action sequences using like props and whatnot, just so we kind of get like the idea of the pacing and the camera movement. But it's always like, we'll get the shot and then it's like, all right, now how are we going to pull this off? And just like, you do what you can with it. Yeah. So it was very rewarding to hear that Gareth was able to kind of like bring back some of that approach to like a full Hollywood movie and be like, listen, we have the ability to change any one of these people into a robot without putting tracking markers on them. Let's focus on getting the best shot we can in the moment right now with the best performances that we can right now without having to worry about, we need a witness camera over here. Let's put tracking dots on that person there and then like make sure everything's set up properly. Because Gareth Edwards is a visual effects artist, he kind of just already intuitively understands that. There's another director that we also interviewed who's also a visual effects artist. He directed Godzilla -1. Takashi, I'm blanking on his name. He just won the visual effects Oscar.
Yes, the Oscar.
Yes.
And famously, it was a $15 million budget, huge visual effects film. Part of me is worried that Hollywood's going to learn the wrong lessons from that. It's like, oh, you can do this with this much budget? Let's start paying all the visual effects artists less. It's like, no, that's not
they shouldn't do that. No.
The takeaway is that like the movie was made by someone who understands how visual effects work, how they can be incorporated into a story, and how much they cost, and like what's realistic to do and stuff like that. And being there with the team as they're doing them, like he was saying, is like normally with a movie, you have like visual effects houses and the director, and they're not talking to each other. And like the director will like pitch an idea for what they want for the shot. The studio will put all this effort into making a shot, and then it gets back to the director and he's like, not what I'm going for. So then they have to go back and restart over, and it wastes a lot of time. That wastes a lot of money. And so the scale of like, I think it was like 30 or 35 people worked on Godzilla -1 in Japan. Of course, it's a different economic sort of situation. I don't know how much they're getting paid. It would be nice if they're getting paid more. I don't think small budgets are the solution to this. It's people knowing how visual effects can integrate into a movie. And so, yeah, between that and, because ILM did basically the same thing for the creator, just on a larger scale. I think it was like an $80 million budget for the creator, but they made it look like a $200 million movie. Yeah, it requires a lot of very, very talented artists, but it's the vision that I think is more important than all of it. And that's what I could relate to most, is that like when we're doing our YouTube videos, it's like we're not worrying about all the petty little details on the side. It's the vision that matters and whether or not we can pull off that vision. And then it's just trying to, get those shots through there. So yeah.
I think that is a very important part that you mentioned about the vision, because I think a lot of studios who have worked on creative worked on other film, but the result might be very, very different. The reason that the director himself knew about all the tricks and the things that he needed to do was the reason that it became so successful.
And we don't often see visual effects artists as directors. There's only been a small number of examples of them. We had oh my god, I'm blanking on his name. Tim. He started Blur Studio. He directed Deadpool. Tim. Blanking on his last name. God dang it. I literally have his book right here. He did Love, Death, and Robots. Oh my god. Okay, anyway.
I think I saw him at SIGGRAPH. I think I know who you're talking about. I also don't remember the last name. Love, Death, Robots.
I hope he doesn't see
I know
this.
who you're talking about, though.
Super cool guy, but he got his start as a visual effects artist. I mean, running, a lot of the management side as well, because he ran a visual effects studio. Like, Blur did all of, like, the cinematics for all, like, the video game launches of the 2000s and 2010s, like World of Warcraft, Halo, a bunch of, big-time game cinematics. They were, like, the guys to go to. And then he directed Deadpool. He did Terminator. And part of that was because like he was able to do Deadpool through Blur because he understood visual effects well enough that he's like, all right, we can do this later. Oh no, this is something we should get right now in camera because fixing this later is going to be 10 times more expensive. But this thing is going to be 10 times more expensive if we do it now than if we did it later. And it's like understanding where to allocate that time and that budget for the effort in certain shots. It goes a long way. But then I don't know. There have been other examples of visual effects artists directing movies that completely bomb, and the studios kind of like take the lesson of like, oh, he's a VFX artist, not a filmmaker. We should do that less. So I don't know. We see that a lot. So I'm very, very happy to see the creator and Godzilla -1 being big tent poles from visual effects artists helming them, understanding how it all works. Like, because Gareth hasn't actually done any visual effects in quite a while. Because he did Godzilla. He did Rogue One, The Creator, all these movies that he wasn't actually making the visual effects for, but he also spent the 10 years before that doing all the visual effects. My favorite example was he did this Attila the Hun short, and he had this army sequence of all these people running across a field, and normally you'd see that in like Lord of the Rings with a giant crowd simulation of 10,000 people, and he's like, I'm just going to film people running on a green screen and project them onto a 2D card and make a particle simulation of all those 2D cards going across this landscape, and as long as I don't move the camera too far, the illusion doesn't break. And it is so convincing. And I remember seeing this back in like 2010, 2011, somewhere, whenever it first came out. I remember like seeing this dude's work and thinking this was amazing. And this is before he did Godzilla. Before he did, actually, I think it was around when he did Monsters, which was like his first feature film, which he did as like, he literally did all the effects by himself for like a feature length movie.
Wow.
I love it.
That's crazy. There was another shot that you guys also reviewed, which was it a fighter jet or a helicopter that was sinking into the water, and he shot that in a bathtub
Oh my
in his
God, that was
house,
crazy.
which is freaking crazy. It takes me back to the
part
concept
of it he shot in the bathtub. Yeah. Like it was like the underwater lighting aspect. It was a 3D model for the actual jet above the water.
Yes.
But still, creative.
But I mean, the fact
it's creative. Problem solving. That's what it's about.
I feel like a lot of the movies miss out on that nowadays. I feel like the focus is too much on the business side, making profits, and so they don't focus too much on the story or just basically creating a good plot. But
I think they were talking to Disney that you are making too many Marvel movies, that you're losing the track of story, and people are not interested in Marvel movies anymore as much as they were a decade ago or like 5 or 6 years ago, because they've been putting out a lot of Marvel movies, and then the VFX is, in some of them, are not that great. And I think you talked about Black Panther on your TED Talk, which I think you reviewed it really nicely, and I think you talked about it, how different elements can change when it comes to movies.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem with visual effects in modern day movies is that the attitude and the approach to them has changed a lot. I saw a video recently about like, I think it was even about Godzilla -1, about how it took the approach of the like 90s visual effects, like the top tier visual effects movies from the 90s, I think are still some of the best visual effects films of all time, because it required so much creative problem solving in order to achieve a certain effect that they had no choice but to make it work. Whereas in the 2000s and then 2010s and 2020s now, it's starting to become just like a pipeline. We have thousands of shots in this thing. Everyone's like, all right, we're just kind of like, it's almost the equivalent to like throwing a filter onto a photo rather than color grading a photo, if that makes sense. It's like, it's become so much of a streamlined process now that I think people can kind of get that sense that like, oh, this is all just, it's starting to feel more vanilla. I think the most egregious example of just wanton visual effects is Dial of Destiny, the newest Indiana Jones movie. And it had some incredible visual effects, don't get me wrong, but I'm going to spoil the ending of the movie. They go back in time like a couple thousand years to this Greek city, and again, the effects are good. There is a little bit of like that, like a little too clean sheen across it all, but I think the biggest problem is that like it's just too much. They designed the entire city, like every house, every street corner, just to give the director flexibility to pick and choose where he puts the shots. And I think that has been the biggest problem with movies over the last couple decades, is that like giving directors too much creative freedom. We saw Peter Jackson go through this with The Hobbit. He did Lord of the Rings under a huge amount of constraint and they had to come up with very clever solutions to do it all, and very innovative, very breakthrough technology was made for all of that. And then when it came to The Hobbit, it's like, I can do anything in the world. I can literally make anything I want. So we're going to do exactly that. Everything, we're just going to do everything now. And I don't think that's a good thing for directors. I think there needs to be some sort of like limitation on what you can pull off, and that forces you into these really interesting creative solutions that are there. That's where interesting stuff comes from, I think. And so, you know, you have these movies these days that it's like the director doesn't understand how visual effects work, and so he's like, yeah, I want this really cool thing here, and do it. As opposed to, I have no idea how we're going to make this work. Let's try to figure it out. Like, no, that's not going to work. Oh, but this might be able. And then, like, you end up arriving at something that does work if you're under those constraints, which is exactly what the creator and Godzilla -1 had to go through, as opposed to Dial of Destiny, which had a massive budget, like $200 or $300 million. Of course, they had the incredible, like, de-aged Harrison Ford through the first, like, 20, 25 minutes of the movie. But, like, for me, the thing that really killed it was just, like, the whole sequence at the end with the Greek city, and it's like it's flying around, and it looks great, but I just couldn't help but feel like the budget for that one sequence was more than entire movies, you know?
Wow.
You know, constraints cause creativity. It's the limits that spur creativity, and it's so important to have that. And we see that, just like you mentioned, so many times where the directors were forced to work within a constrained budget. That's when all the crazy shots came around. And now when they have freedom to create everything, they're like, oh, I don't know what I should do. Let's just do everything. It's so true what you said. And it's not like I know everything that went through their mind. It's just when I'm watching the movies, I just feel
you will see the difference. Yeah,
I just feel different when I watch The Lord of the Rings. I can watch The Lord of the Rings today as a 3D artist, and know how they made it. Of course, the graphics still hold up, but I can make better looking shots probably for some of the shots I can with Unreal Engine if I really try. But it doesn't mean that I can get that. Like they nailed it so many years ago, and there's some magic to that. And I feel like some of the movies today fail to capture some. I'm not saying all.
No, let's talk about The Matrix, the first one and the last one that they released a few years ago. Like, they are so different. They are so different. But guys, we are talking about constraint and all of this. Sora AI, it's making videos out of text. So with this type of capability, where do you think the movie industry will go now that we have text to video? And this is now. Imagine where we're going to be in 3 years' time.
You've seen Sora, right?
Oh, of course. I mean, AI has been a big thing in image generation and video generation for the last, like, 2 years or so. I remember... Because when I first learned about like Midjourney and DALL-E 2, I was like, wow, this is incredible. I spent a lot of time just like, wow, I could just make anything. And then like when like it started entering the zeitgeist and more conversation started surrounding it about like the morality and ethics of it all and all that stuff and just like how it's going to impact the future of actual working artists, that's when my eyes started opening up to like, oh, interesting. And then of course last year, Corridor, we pursued making actual like anime films.
That was amazing.
Like, I didn't work on that project, but it was easily our most controversial project of all time, and I liked it because it was, in my opinion, very creative problem solving. Like, how do you make a 5, 6, 7 minute cartoon? Traditionally, you would require a couple dozen artists and months worth of time, which is just out of the realm of possibility for us at all. And so we did this as a test, and like, wow, we can do this. And like, the internet was very divided over this. We had a lot of people who loved it and loved what we were doing, and a lot of people who are now like, they hate us forever because we did that. They saw us as like destroying the industry, and I was like, oh wow, okay, I'm not used to having this sort of like criticism. Wow. Even though so it was a weird disconnect for me, like supporting the project but not working on it and still getting the hate for it. I don't know. It was a weird thing, but like, I still see it as like a tool. At least the way we did that is like, it was a means to an end for creating something. And I don't think more people having better tools is a bad thing. I think the thing people are worried about more than like artists losing their job, which is bad, but like the sort of I don't know how to describe it. It's like, it's, I don't know. In a world where like you can literally fabricate any, like, I don't know, part of me is worried about my own job as a like a personality, as a host, because at what point in the future are people going to come home from work and they're not turning on Netflix or YouTube, they're just turning on their AI generated content and they're like, I want to watch an action film that's also like pretty funny starring all of my friends, and it just starts generating an Oscar-worthy script, real-time rendering all of this as you're watching it, and it's like the best movie you've ever seen, and it was invented on the fly, on the spot. At what point is that going to be a thing?
Can I stop you right there?
Jobs irrelevant.
Can I stop you right there? Just this is very interesting that you brought that up. Farah, can you please tell Wren and everybody about what our father is listening to nowadays?
Dude, it's crazy. So our father loves an Iranian singer. She passed away 20 years ago, and he used to play all of her song all the time at home. So we used to listen to the same song over and over again. Now with AI, he has used all the new artist song with her voice. So now you can imagine we are listening to her voice all the time, but with new singles every day.
It's like all the recent singers, the recent songs, but it's with her voice. And it's not like he knows about all of these morality things. He just found it on YouTube and he enjoys listening to it. So we're listening to this person who has passed away, but then she's now singing. I don't know about the copyrights. I don't know about any of those. I just know that my father is doing that, and I realized when we heard that, we're like, holy shit, this is actually happening. Yeah. It's gonna be music, and then it's gonna become movies. So when you say at what point, it is going to happen. It has already happened with music. Our father is listening to that, and it's weird. It's really weird. But if he can deal with it, and he doesn't have any specific feelings towards it, he just wants to listen to the music. It is going to come a time where I feel like people are going to become numb to that as well. It's going to become normal. Netflix is going to have it. Hulu's going to have it. Amazon's going to have it. And I have no idea how we're going to deal with it, but I feel like it is inevitable. It is going to happen regardless of if Corridor makes a video about it or not.
Yeah, people are severely underestimating the impact generative AI is going to have because it's the worst it's ever going to look right now. Sora, they don't have any intention of releasing that. Like to the public, I have friends who are like pretty in the weeds of all this stuff, and they found like podcasts where like a person from OpenAI casual was like, yeah, no, we're not going to release that to the public. It's all just like for an investment hype, essentially, because it's like the danger is a little too high. I guess they haven't quite gotten a handle on it yet. I mean, maybe they'll eventually release it, but at a certain point, it is going to become open source, regardless of whether or not they release it. Maybe Stability AI will release their version of it, and it'll all be open source. All the people who are like, not any knowledge is good knowledge. Sure. I don't know how that's going to affect things, but what I do know is that you still have to have a creative vision behind whatever you make, and a lot of AI generated content lacks that. It may be beautiful, it may have great composition, but it's really hard to art direct, and it's really hard to keep consistency across multiple images or videos or ideas, and those I imagine those problems will eventually get worked out, maybe in a year, maybe 5 years or 10, 50, I don't know. But it has already progressed way faster than anyone anticipated. Like 2 years ago, beginning of the year 2022, 99.9% of the population had no idea what generative AI even was. Like the concept of it was a complete foreign. And now we got images, AI generated images is old news in the span of just 2 years. And video is the new thing. And yeah, I don't know. It's because I follow like the VFX subreddit, and they're always complaining about like the AI stuff and like the future of their jobs. And I think, it's, I don't know. I have always tried to position myself.
Please,
I've always tried to position myself in a way that I'm making creative decisions overall. Like I've always wanted to be more of like a producer or a director rather than like a VFX artist. I don't want to be told what to do. I always kind of thought if I'm just rotoscoping, that job's eventually going to be replaced because no one wants to do that. And I didn't want to be like one name in the credits at the end of like a Marvel movie. Like I worked 80 hours a week for months for like, and and maybe that's the vanity side of me talking. I want the attention, perhaps, but like part of me is like I saw the future as like I need to be the one making decisions. That is a job that I don't see being replaceable. Is a creative decision maker. So as long as I can continue doing that, I think I will be fine from the AI revolution currently underway. Whereas technical artists, unfortunately, I think over time we'll start seeing more and more of their work getting replaced. Like last year, for instance, I'm blanking on the name, Wonder Dynamics. They came out with the whole system where it's like you just take footage of someone and you can turn that person into a CG character. You don't have to know how to composite. You don't have to know how to animate or model or any of that stuff. Render, you can just do that, and now you can have a 3D character in your shot. And for someone like me, that's incredibly exciting because that means it's now easier for me to tell stories, to make these videos about things because the tools have gotten so much quicker to use. So for me, I can use them faster. A new mantra that I started a year or two ago was that I want fewer renders and more footage. I want stuff that is more captured rather than post-produced, if that makes sense. So it's like if I can get a 3D model of it, like the Boston Dynamics robot, for instance, I can get a model of him animated doing a thing. Maybe like he runs up and then like looks like this, right? And I can get that loaded up in my phone in real time, place him next to a wall, hit play on the animation, and run up, follow him as he looks around the wall, and get that all in camera. Maybe I'm recording or screen capping. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant because now I have a final shot that I didn't have to do anything afterwards. There's no homework. That's what I hated most about school is that like I spent all day at school doing work, and then I have to go home and do more work. Like, but school's done. It's like I kind of want there to be a situation where it's like I get the shot and it's done. Like I have the footage now, I can like just go edit the video together and it's done. I don't have to. I don't know. I find that idea and concept very alluring, even as a 3D artist, where I do get a lot of enjoyment and rewarding activity from doing that sort of work. I don't know. I don't think it's a bad thing with more people being able to have better creative tools.
I absolutely agree with that.
It's a Wild West, and we don't know what that's going to look like yet.
Yes. I think we'll find out with time. I feel like as if newer artists will appreciate this a lot more because they don't have to go and learn a lot of the things that older artists have learned for many years. They have the tools available for them, but I feel like that's true with everything. It's always been the case because technology is always getting better. When newer artists come, they don't have to do, for example, UV unwrapping anymore. I seldom find people who love to do UV unwrapping. If AI takes over that part, I'll be glad. Yeah, I'll be glad because it's not creative. It's not a creative job. It takes a lot of time, and you just want to get your character, texture, and you want to start animating, right? So there's parts where people want to speed up, and there's parts where you love to just have full control over. And I feel like you still can. That's the case. We had this discussion with another friend of ours where even though Midjourney came out and people got really scared, you still don't have a lot of Midjourney artists making a living compared to the traditional artists. Let me explain why. Because even if you are using Midjourney, if you have no creative background and you come in and say, you know what, I'm going to take over jobs with Midjourney now, you cannot come up with the ideas because you never actually tried making things yourself. Even if there was something that could make 3D models now, for me, I need to get into the software to create things until I find out what it is I want to create. Just like Gareth, he needs to shoot the shot and then later figure out what he needs to put in the shot. So I feel like, yes, these things are coming around, but you still need to be heavily involved in the process to come out with something great. Yes, there's going to be a lot of people who use the AI technology to create something, but that doesn't mean it's going to be great, and that doesn't mean they're going to succeed just because they have the tools. You still need to spend a lot of time, a lot of effort, and you use these tools to help you get what you used to spend thousands of hours on. Now you spend 100 hours, and you can produce more quality content if you're good. That's how I feel like you should look at it.
At the end of the day, no one cares how good something looks. They just care whether or not the package is good. It's like you have all these movies that have incredible visual effects, but if it's not a good movie, no one cares.
Yeah.
That's
So
absolutely
you
true.
still got to make good stuff at the end of the day. It's like,
Yes.
It
Yes.
goes back to the story. It goes back to the
Yes.
story and it goes back to the idea all the time.
Can I ask something? Did you watch the latest? I mean, this is a little bit unrelated to VFX, but I think we have to bring it up because right before this podcast today, we watched NVIDIA GTC announcement. Did you?
I've not
did you
seen
watch
it.
that?
No, I've
Okay.
not. No.
Skynet, bro, Skynet trailer. It's exactly
I saw
like
a meme talking about like how Nvidia looks like the beginning of a movie going wrong.
Exactly,
I don't
it's
even
like
know what
an-
they announced.
Dude, if people are freaking out about like Sora and all, Farah, tell them.
No, we should go and watch NVIDIA's GTC exhibition. They are just introducing the robots and they're showing how they are training the robots and how friendly the robots are. But it's exactly like a game that you play that is apocalyptic.
Just
and
the beginning of a game, just like the start
and then
of the game.
robots turn rogue and starts killing everybody. But yeah, that's
And it's so funny because in the ad, while they're showing it on display, there's like humans holding the robot's hand and just trying to teach it how to walk. And then the robots seem like they're
Very
stupid, but then they say in the Isaac software, they're simulating all these robots. And then they learn more and more how to emulate humans. And they're showing this human playing drums and the robot's learning that. And I'm like, what if someone's shooting somebody else and the robot tries to emulate that after that? Like, it's like, it is so fun to see the technology, but that was the first time I got legit scared when I literally right before this podcast, I was like, okay, this is kind of scary.
Did you guys ever see the movie iRobot with Will Smith?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's hard not to feel like that future actually is becoming a reality. At the time, I was like, robots that move like that? Yeah, right. But as it's like, we're just failing to take into account the rate of progression through all of that. And it's like, eventually we are all going to have like little robots in our houses that are doing all the chores because it's stuff we don't want to do, you know? Obviously it needs to come down to a price that's affordable. VR headsets were like $50,000 for decades. And now they're, you know, a thousandth of that.
Yes. Yes.
100th, I guess. But like,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's very, very difficult to project into the future because it's not linear, and our brains evolved to be linear. You know, year in, year out for centuries, the farmlands would be basically the same every year. The weather would be basically the same. The society would be basically the same every year. You could linearly project that in time. And your skill set as a horse rider would still be good 50 years from now as it is today. And in a world where exponential growth is a thing, our brains literally cannot comprehend exponential growth. I did a video at the beginning of the pandemic about it, about like, if you were to take a sheet of paper and double it 100 times, how thick would that sheet of paper be? Or that stack of paper be? That's actually
Right.
a real question to you two. How thick do you
I
think
don't
that
know.
stack of paper would be? If you double it 100 times. So you double it, you get 2 pieces of paper. You double it again, you get 4 pieces of paper. Double it again, you get 8 pieces of paper. And you stack it up. Do you think that stack of paper would be as tall as a house?
Because we are using the power now. Every time we are doing it to the power of 2.
So it's
it's
exponentially-
exponentially going up. So it should be a 3-story house, 4-story house maybe.
Okay. So it'd be basically 2 to the power of 100 times the thickness of a paper. And
And
I
what
don't
is
know
the
if you've
scale
ever
of
put
that?
in 2 to the power of 100 into a calculator, but most calculators can't even compute that number.
Oh, no way.
So that stack of paper would reach the moon by the 42nd doubling. The 43rd
40.
doubling is twice as far as the moon. The 44th doubling would be 4 times as far as the moon. So by the time you get to 100, it's like
You're in a
something like
different
9,
galaxy.
I forget the number. It's like 9 billion light years or something like that. It's like bigger than the observable universe.
Wow.
Exponential growth.
Wow.
Our brains just can't intuitively understand it. Yeah, it's like the rate of advancement itself is increasing. So we're getting more advancement per year now than we were a decade ago. Obviously, it's better now. But like I'm talking about like a decade ago, the advancement from year to year was a certain amount. Now that advancement is a lot more per year. And that's just compounding over the course of year over year over year. Yeah, it's, anyone who claims they can predict the future or like, oh, it'll be like this year, this way in a year. It'll be like this way. No, it's going to be 10, 50 years before that's a thing. It's like no one has any idea what they're talking about. It's impossible for them to sort of project that.
Wow. So if
Even Ray Kurzweil
Wren,
is
it-
like he can't even perfectly predict the future, and he's like the best one at it.
wow. So if Wren, if we ask you how does future look like for Wren, would you have an answer for that?
Well, okay, maybe. I don't know. Like I said at the beginning of this, is like I don't really know what I'm doing 3 months from now, let alone a year or two from now. But what remains true for me is I want to continue making videos. I want to continue making stuff. I want to just continue that.
I love that. And I hope you do, because what you create is not only amusing and fun to watch, you alongside everybody at Corridor, but also I feel like it's very inspiring
And educational.
because what you guys create and the fact that, again, you guys have been doing it for such a long time proves to other artists out there that they can create the same things and they can make a living out of what they love to do. And so thank you for all the stuff that you guys create. And now, because of this podcast especially, I know how much effort goes behind the scenes. I mean, we do watch the behind the scenes videos, but the fact that you're talking about the actual numbers, like the days and the months and the weeks, that means so much, because it takes a lot of effort, a lot of stress to be able to produce just one video. And you guys are producing so many. And so thank you for all of that.
Yeah, that was why we really lucked out with VFX Artists React, is because we had a super popular show that we could produce in under a week. It was like a day of filming, maybe half a day of research, and then a single editor spending about a week editing, and we can put out a new video. So that was just like super easy to maintain week after week after week for years now. We're coming up on 5 years doing React next month. Wow. And the first episode was literally just an idea, like, oh, let's look at the new Sonic trailer. He looked really janky. I was like, and then it blew up, and they're like, all right, let's do that again. That was easy to make, and let's do that again. So it's like, if you can find an easily repeatable format, it's like that is gold. And I have spent so much energy over the last couple of years trying to figure out ways to make videos easier so that I can make more of them. That is hard to do. But yeah, I'm still trying, I'm still learning. And it helps having like a support structure around you to hold you accountable for things.
If you could give one advice to the younger Wren, if you could go back in time and talk to him, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
Oh man, I would give him a list of the top 50 most viral videos of the last decade and give him all of those ideas.
That's the best
First.
one that
Yes. That's I was expecting something philosophical.
I was like, go make these videos, they're gonna be viral.
Like, I know this is gonna work, dude. Spend time more on
Nuclear
these.
video, don't put it down. Nuclear video, do it.
I used to
that's a
think, I used to
genius
have a lot
answer.
of regret that I didn't start YouTube sooner. Like, I was like, man, I started YouTube 2 years too late, because like I was watching Corridor and Freddy just like take off. And I was like still at like 0 subscribers and like just struggling to get anywhere. And I was like, man, if I only started a little bit sooner, knowing what I know now. But it's like that's continued to be a thing, and I've had to learn that like that is not the right mindset. There's always opportunity to grow. There's always, now is still the best time to start a YouTube channel. It's always the best time to start a new YouTube channel. You just, it's there. Yeah, perseverance, I think, is the most important trait, just being able to keep going. I also like to say quantity over quality, because with quantity comes quality. That was another
100%
founding
agree with
tenet
you.
of my scale series, by the way, is that the effects do not have to be good. They just have to convey a point. They just have to contextualize what I'm talking about. They don't have to be really good visual effects. That has changed over the course. Like last year, it was a big focus on making sure that the videos it was good storytelling, the visual effects were all really good and top notch, and I started realizing that like we're kind of like, I'm losing some of that initial idea I had for the series, which is like whether or not the visual effects themselves are good is irrelevant. They just got to be good enough. It depends what you're doing, but like I quantity is what's going to get you learning the stuff and help you develop taste and figure out what's good. And then you can start refining the quality over time. But it's very, very hard to actively be like, I know this isn't as good as it could be, but it's okay. I'm I'm going to move on. So the next thing will be just a little bit better. It's like compounding interest. It's so much better than, yeah. Anyway.
We 100% agree with you on that. The quantity matters a lot because the more you do it, the more you learn, the more you fail, and the easier it is for you to reach your goal.
And it is impossible to have quality when you begin. It is impossible if you're beginning something to have the best quality. You have to go for quantity first, and then you will get to quality. That's how we started this podcast in the first place. We said we don't have the right equipment. Let's just freaking do it. It's fine. We'll get the quantity, and then eventually we'll buy the equipment. And that's the only reason we managed to do it for 45 episodes now today. And so I absolutely agree with that point. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the advice. Wren, it's been a pleasure speaking with you.
I had a great time hanging out with you guys.
It was amazing, Wren. We loved every moment of it.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And let's do this again sometime.
100%, man. Looking forward to it. Hopefully we'll meet in person one day. I'm going to make sure that happens. But until then, please keep making the awesome videos. And for everybody watching and listening, we're going to put all the stuff that we talked about, the links to the videos in the description so you guys can check them out. So Wren, once again, thank you so much.
Keep being awesome.
Thank you. And to everybody watching and listening,
if you guys are in LA, I'll give you a tour of the studio. Sorry, I'm talking over your outro there, but yeah.
Wow.
Come to LA, I'll give you a tour of the
Yes, we
studio.
want that. No. You need to promise that. We would love that. A studio tour.
It's now recorded,
Yes,
so
a
it is
studio
now
tour.
It is now a promise, you know.
Sounds good. Yeah, see you there.
Thank you, Wren. And for everybody watching and listening, we love you guys as well. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Until then, ciao.